Thank you and welcome. This is our Q4 2023 board meeting for the Utah Division State Parks Board. And welcome. I'm Corey Cram, the chair. Happy to have everyone with us who interested here and those joining us online and if you're viewing this as it's recorded. But we're glad to be here together today. Where our location is Anasazi State Park. It's 9:30 a.m. and we'll call this meeting to order. Prior to our meeting today, we had a field trip yesterday and had a great time visiting Kodachrome Basin and then also Escalante Petrified Forest State Park. It's the official title, right? And we appreciate Brandon hosting us at Kodachrome and incredible food and fun visit, and Chad at Escalante Petrified Forest, and Jamie here. And appreciate everybody's attendance and glad to be here. Let's go around the room and note who's here, and then we'll figure out who's online. Brent, could you start us?
Just that I'm here.
Give us your name, and, yeah, and then we'll know that you're here.
Okay, Brent Boswell is here.
Fallon Owen here.
Jack Draxler
Lisa Colthorpe.
Jeff Rasmussen.
and Corey Cram.
Lori Backus. Elaine Gislar.
Russ Stedman.
Tony Hammer.
Melanie Shepherd.
Devin Chavez.
Hey, and, you're here.
You're here. You have to be.
Okay. And then online, looks like we have Scott. Is that correct?
That is correct. Hi, Corey.
Welcome. Glad to have you. Too bad you couldn't be here with us. We miss you.
Miss you too.
Thank you. And Megan, are you with us?
I'm here.
Good to see you, or good to hear you. We see your little face, but you're not moving. And Lisa, are you with us as well?
I am. It's good to see everybody. I'm sorry that I'm not able to be there with you.
Well, we appreciate you joining us online, and like always, we had a great time, and you missed out, but we'll catch you next time. And Shane, are you with us as well?
Yep, I'm here. Nice to see y'all. Sorry I can't be there in person.
All right, Shane Stroud. Anybody else join us online that we need to know?
Chris Hermoto's gonna join in just a minute.
He's already there.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm here. I'm here.
Chris, going kind of incognito. Okay, we see you now. Utah State fan. And we got Susan as well.
I'm not showing Susan.
Who's the Z?
I think those are
Those are all
with Paul.
Did you say Lisa?
Okay.
Yeah, Lisa's there. She already introduced herself.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, everybody. And at this point, we got an agenda. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at that? Does anybody have any needs for suggested changes to the agenda? If not, I'd accept a motion to accept the motion. To accept the agenda as it's presented.
I move to approve the agenda for today's meeting as distributed.
Thank you. I've got a motion from Joe to accept the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Thank you. Second from Jax. Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
And any opposed? All right, motion accepted. Thank you. Also provided are the minutes from our August 10th, 2023 board meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review those? Okay, we appreciate Melanie putting those together, taking care of those for us, and we miss Claudia. Your input on those. Miss Claudia for more than just her input on the minutes. I'd accept the motion to accept those minutes as presented.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from the August board meeting.
Thank you. I've got a motion from Alicia, my vice chair, to accept the minutes as presented. Is there a second? All right, a second from Brent. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Could I just say that these are some of the best minutes I've ever seen? Here's a compliment, Melanie, on those.
Oh, thanks.
I've seen lots of minutes in my time from all kinds of different places, and these are good or better than that episode.
Appreciate it. I agree. Just capturing things and not a whole lot of unneeded information, but really focusing on stuff and good information, plenty of information. We appreciate that. So thanks. All right. Is this the fun part of our meeting? Well, it's always fun. To have our board reports, and let's start out with Elaine, and we'll tell you what we normally do is every quarter we ask our board members to kind of tell us the parks they visited or experiences they've had. You haven't had, that background, but could we ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself? And we want to welcome you to our board.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I visited 10, my husband and I visited 10 of the state parks.
Good for you.
That's it.
Not counting the ones that we visited. during this meeting.
Right.
Excellent.
But I was formerly in Grand County, so I had, I did a lot of work and support for the Dead Horse Point, which is actually in San Juan County where I'm at right now. But you can't get to it unless you're in Grand County. But that's okay, because we take all the tax.
It works, right?
Yeah, so it works. So, and I was there when we started planning the Utah Raptor and went before the legislators to support work repairing the dam with Commissioner in Grand County when I was there to help support it, and actually did a match funding out of our tourism rent tax for people that donated. So to support it, because I saw a need, how much we needed that Raptor State Park. Then I'm in San Juan County now, and I love working with Chris Hansen. He's amazing. We did the Eclipse event, which was wonderful. We had people from all over the world with goosenecks, and that was exciting. And then tonight, actually, I'm headed to Edge of the Cedars because we have a night at the museum.
Nice.
And we have a base camp summit tomorrow in Blanding, but we wanted the people that are coming from all over to go to Edge of the Cedars because it's such an incredible facility and a lot of people aren't aware of what's there. So we're doing that this evening from 6 to 8.
Good for you.
So I'm happy to be here, and thank you I'm honored actually to be on the board. I love our state parks. Again, if there's anybody who could take over the national parks, that would be awesome.
You give us a suggestion.
Elaine, what's your day job?
I'm the Economic Development and Visitor Services Director for San Juan County, so I do both.
Where did you grow up?
In Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Really?
So, so my husband and I have been out here in Utah. We lived in Salt Lake, and then we moved down to Moab. We were in Moab about 17 years, and went there when there were no just yeah. I mean, just no branded hotels, and it was quieter and
Bless you.
and so, and then I moved to San Juan County 2 years ago when Natalie Randall left San Juan County and went to Utia. Then San Juan asked me to come down and work in the same position, so I did.
Cool.
And my husband and I live in Monticello.
We lived in central Pennsylvania for 12 years. I went to graduate school at Penn State.
Did you?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, my kids are back. Both of our boys are back there and we're out here. But they come out and they love coming out for vacation. So,
Well, welcome.
Well, thank you.
Russ, you want to continue, please?
Well, I actually did this exact same trip that we're doing in September on our annual bike ride. And there's never enough times to come down in this part of the country. I love this neck of the woods, and a little different being on a motorcycle in September than it is today. I didn't like driving my truck. Let's just put it that way. Over this road, I'd much rather be on a motorcycle. But these state parks are wonderful. It was fun to be with you all yesterday. That's all of that.
So it was a crazy quarter for me. So I went to my regular parks. I went to my 3 parks that I'm over. once again, but, yeah, also I haven't been to anywhere else in the last quarter, but we have a new park manager in Willard, so we're very happy about that and
Gearing up for lots of lights and things.
looking forward to Fantasy at the Bay. And again, if anybody wants to come, I'm happy to host you. I'll even feed you. So if anyone decides they want to come up, down, over, let me know and I'll take care of you.
When does that start? With the lights?
Starts December 1st. So, and it goes to the 24th.
Very good. Mr. Brown?
So I had the awesome opportunity. Scott suggested that I stay in one of the cottages. And so Melanie helped me hook that up. And then I ended up at Gunlock with the fellow Nephi boy, John Allred. And that is just freaking amazing. The cottages, I stayed in the cabins, the little cabins, and that's a cool experience too. And then at the cottage, a totally different experience. I couldn't believe it. And they had TVs and stuff. Like phenomenal value, and then the view. I mean, sit on my porch and watch the sunset over the lake, and the staff, just awesome. So thanks everybody for suggesting to help me set that up, and just phenomenal. I shared this yesterday with a few of you at dinner, but there was a couple having dinner as we were walking around the park last night, and I asked them, stop talking to them for a minute. Well, they asked me who we were, and so then I said, how long have you been here? And they said, well, we were going to be here 2 nights and we stayed 5. And I think that's so what a testament to the park that people plan something and whatever they were going to do next, they canceled that and stayed at the park for an extra 3 days and they're still there. So what an awesome thing. One other thing I was going to add is Gunlock. I always get, so I like we drive along and see the state park ahead sign. Gunlock doesn't have those. So I talked to John about it, but I don't know if that's UDOT or if we have to approach UDOT. But I think it's awesome branding. It's such a simple thing. But even for the residents who aren't going to the park, they never can pass there without knowing that's a state park because the sign will say Gunlock. And then there's another sign below it that there's another lake in the area that's copied our branding. It looks like it ought to be a state park based on the signage. But anyway, I think just even for the locals who live in St. George, if every time they drive by that, I think that's something we should add. I don't know how we did it.
In Quell Creek was trying to get some signage out on SR9 and they were having to pay UDOT to make that happen. So
That's nuts.
One state agency came, another state, but it's not even it's not the big sign, it's just the one that says state park ahead.
It's like the UDOT. So,
Yeah, anyways, but I missed that and I drove in another like 30 times in the 2 days. And every time I was like, man, there's no sign. So that's my report. It was awesome. As always, state parks are awesome.
Well, first, welcome to Garfield County, everyone. It's been fun to have you all here, and it's been fun to hear all your feedback this morning about your trip on Highway 12. I think you all like it here.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm a slacker and a terrible person, and I have nothing to report.
You're awesome.
I think it's fine. I was glad you all got to see the state parks in Garfield County / King County, but and our cool partners that we have here.
It sounds like we do have a little piece of photochrome that's in Kane. and we need to
It's
work
more
on
of a
boundary
little piece
adjustments
in
for it.
Garfield and a lot more in Kane, but yeah.
We're working
You
on
said
that.
we're willing to annex, so I'm gonna have that conversation.
It's like when you shoot in a deer, there's like lapland.
Yeah.
Boundaries. and then we work on
Exactly.
that. Jeff?
well, first of all, thanks for this round of meetings. It's been delightful. I've really enjoyed them. And I have been to this part of state before as a legislator, but just beautiful. So I'm an at-large member, but I live up in the north region, and so I look in on the same 3 parks that we did in our last round of meetings regularly in my business, Bear Lake, Hiram, Willard Bay, because those are the areas where I cover my business. So I've had a neat opportunity to participate with the Bear Lake Watch. group who has spearheaded an effort, and our local state senator, Chris Wilson, sponsored legislation, is to do an in-depth study of Bear Lake to make sure we preserve the beauty of it, the water quality, the visitor quality experience, all those things. And so last week we had a kickoff at Utah State University, who was commissioned to spearhead these studies. I'm very impressed with the various departments at Utah State who submitted to participate in the study. It's going to be good, a really good thing for the lake. It's needed because the visitation, as with most places, has just skyrocketed, and there's just impacts. And so we need to make sure that one of the big things that locals and people who visit say is, whatever we do, let's preserve that beautiful color of the lake. It's spectacular. So that's it for me. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, so a couple of state parks that I visited this quarter. Last weekend went to the Antelope Island Buffalo Roundup. That was really cool. A few years ago, we held board meeting there, and we were there for the vaccinations. Just probably. And so it was cool to see the other aspect of that. And wow, the organization and everything just like going into the park, it's still dark and you're going in and they've got all these checkpoints and everything is just super organized. And I was just really, really impressed with how it was run. So kudos to everyone that puts in so much time putting that together, because it really did a fantastic job. And then when I was at tourism conference in September, I took my staff and we went biking through Snow Canyon State Park. So on all of the paved trails and did a little hike, and that was super fun. They all were, committed to go and get electric bikes because they're like, that was the funnest thing ever. But they don't have any trails like that in Pearl. So it was just wonderful. It's beautiful in there, and we went kind of early in the morning. So the weather was amazing, and that park is truly beautiful. And St. George is so busy now that you get up in there, and it's just wonderful to get away from the crowds and do that. So both of those were great visits to parks that I don't get to spend a lot of time in, and so I had a good time. And construction's still happening at Red Fleet. I'm still crossing my fingers that it will be done for the summer. And hopefully get some of those cool bathrooms that we toured yesterday. But yeah, so the construction's going on there. The Field House is bringing back their Youth and Kids program, which I'm really excited about. That should be great for the winter. Get some kids in there doing some hands-on type stuff. And I don't even think I went to Steinaker this quarter. But things are great there, I'm sure. So, yeah.
Talk about Snow Canyon. Every time I hear people frustrated with the Zion National Park, because I always just jump in and set them to Snow Canyon.
Yeah.
You're going to have a better experience. You're going to get away from people. It's more beautiful and greater opportunity.
Yes.
And anyways, it's still kind of hidden out there, and we just get more people there.
So one thing I was noticing though while I was there is, they have that huge black sands or black, whatever it's called, that's going in across from there, that development. What is it called? Black Desert, that's what it's called. That is going to change that whole area, I think, and that state park is just going to, see a lot of growth, I'm assuming, with that. So, or just at least from what they're projecting, talking about.
I think that's going to be a common theme around those parks in particular down there, but I guess the beauty of it is we'll always have the parks, and they can be a haven and still a resource.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're red emerald visitors, so.
Yeah.
So I did hit Snow Canyon too, and it was interesting though that, first of all, those are the most beautiful campgrounds I've seen yet as far as you're right in the mountain, right in the rocks like that. It's amazing. But I talked to one of the gals at would have been the North Gate, and she was saying how, she said, I was saying one of the cottages, she said, we will never have those here. We don't want those here. Snow Canyon doesn't want to grow. They keep wanting us to do all this, and we're never gonna do it. Is that a true theme of where Snow Canyon's at, or that one lady's opinion?
It looks like you're looking at me, Brent. You know, I guess I think our park managers have a lot of discretion as to the direction that they would like the park to go, and then have the ability to put together a plan, and that plan gets some broader review and input.
Honestly, it sounds more like a personal feeling. We would love to find ways to accommodate more people at Snow Canyon. We have some challenges there with the desert tortoise habitat and the restrictions that come from that. So it's not as easy as like what Brandon's doing at Kodachrome. You know, even at Kodachrome, there's still cultural and environmental clearances that we have to get, but it's a lot easier to be able to expand. Snow Canyon is bound by those restrictions. But that being said, I think there are opportunities to expand. I know there's opportunities outside of the main canyon, like off of, is it Highway 18 that goes along the east side? There's some state property up along those cliffs that has a lot of potential to host more people. I would love to have the cottages at Snow Canyon, and we'll continue to push for that because that's what the public wants, and it's a great business investment and just an opportunity to attract people that likely wouldn't come if we didn't have those facilities. And that's the whole idea, to offer something for everyone so that everyone's wanting to come to state parks and stay longer. And so, you know, we hear that sentiment quite often from locals at any park that, you know, we want this park to stay like it was in 1950 and not grow. And, you know, that I guess that would be nice from a local perspective. But the reality is Utah is growing. People are coming to Utah, and as an agency, we're tasked with we're a multi-use agency and finding more opportunities for people. And a lot of the parks have room to expand and grow, and so I think Snow Canyon is one of them. It's just a little more of a challenge there.
I mean, Corey, can I amend my report, please? I mentioned that my grandson and I attended the Bison Roundup last weekend, and certainly wanted to thank Devin for a fantastic time. The grandson loved this one. It was, so that's another state park.
Good for you. We'll take advantage of those opportunities, and our managers are more than welcome to accommodate you and work with our regional managers and like it out. This past little while, I had enjoyed the groundbreaking ceremony for Utah Raptor State Park, and really excited for all the amenities and the history and what's going to take place there. And that's going to capture about 130 million years to about 1940s, 60 years ago. So a big time span captured that one park with the history, and I need to see that go on and moving forward with the campgrounds and the visitor center and developing the water supply and everything that has to take place there. We also had a ribbon cutting, which is a cool ribbon cutting. I don't know if it's posted anywhere, but the Candace, the park manager, worked with one of her hosts and enabled her to set that up. And so they had an RC car that went up a ramp. The ramp hit a motorhome. The motorhome went down a ramp and bumped a boat that went out into some water, and then that hit a fishing pole that hit over, tipped over, that had a fish on the end of it that landed on a picnic plate. And so, so the whole thing was to capture all of the opportunities for Quail Creek. The fishing, the boating, the camping.
The video's in Devin's part of the quarterly report.
Perfect.
One of the highlights, just click on the Quail Creek button and there should be a quick video.
This is an MIT graduate, but
Just like when they do and it worked, and it was neat, and it was just kind of fun to see, enabling our staff to do, a volunteer actually, right? To do something, and it was just fun and neat and so unique. And that campground is just beautiful, and once again, check out those bathrooms. But anyway, that was fun. Let's hear. Let me just finish up, and then we'll get to Lisa. At Sand Hollow, we worked to get Jason Bob left us, and Candace from Coal Creek is moved over there, is going to take over operations there. We'll have to fill her position. And I mentioned with the ribbon cutting at Quail Creek, they have this RC thing. So they've established a radio controlled car track at Quail Creek. Where else do you see that in most of our parks? And so here shortly, you'll be able to rent radio controlled cars and go through this track.
Wow.
So my wife and daughter and I went over there a couple of weeks ago and played with that, and it was just a blast. It was just fun. And we're pretty spazzes and have no control on those cars, but it was just a great time. I took my wife to Antelope Island here a month or so ago. She'd never been there before, and it was a really good experience for her, me too. And we did indeed see antelope and the bison and coyotes and pelicans out on the water and stuff, and enjoyed the historical aspects of it. Just really fun. Went to Core Pink a couple of times, and once again, clean bathrooms, and you saw that at Kodachrome and everywhere we go. And remember Fred always used to say that everywhere he went, he'd stop at the bathrooms at state parks because he knew that they'd be nice and clean, and we got the cleanest and best bathrooms. And Kodachrome has themed showers, we learned, and beautiful tile work. Anyway, just love our parks. Lisa, can you tell us a little bit about your experience this past quarter?
Well, my experiences haven't been nearly as fun as other folks. As a junior faculty member, I've been kind of swamped over here with work. But I was able to get down to Goblin Valley. And so I was driving up south and stopped over there to take a hike with my dog on the way home, which is pretty cool to check out. And I'm looking forward. I have an annual tradition of we go camping down in the Moab area for Thanksgiving. So we'll be staying out Willow Springs area. So I'm looking forward to seeing kind of everything that's been going on with Raptor State Park.
Very good. Well, thank you.
Lisa, is that a mountain bike behind you?
It is not. It's my e-bike. I commute to work.
I was gonna say, that's all I think about lately, but make sure you hit those Conzo trails at Willow Springs at Utah Raptor.
Mhm.
They're on BLM land adjacent to our new park there, but they're incredibly fun.
On the north side, is that north and east?
Probably. It's on Willow Springs Road as you go into the backside of Arches. And there's just some incredibly fun mountain bike trails there.
And are you saying that there's new trails, or is this just a being aware of ones that are?
I don't think they're necessarily new. I think they've been for a while. Megan could tell you a lot more about them, but they're super fun. If you're going to be right there at Willow Springs, that's the road that takes you right to them.
Yep. Usually we ride those trails. So we camp there, we do Thanksgiving, and we hit the trails during the day, and sit around a fire in the evening. So it's a lot of fun, and I love all the trails down there. It's great.
Have fun. Good for you. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. I think if anything anybody else wants to add, we appreciate you guys. Just glad to have you on the board. Appreciate your participation and service and input. And as always, give our staff feedback of what you experience and good, bad, or otherwise. And we want to hear it to make it a better experience for everyone. Let's jump into our division reports and business report. Scott, are you next on the agenda for us?
That sounds great to me. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Yep. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. I apologize. I would love to be there with you. And I feel bad that I missed out on the festivities and activities yesterday. That would have been fun.
As
But
many selfies as there would have been if you group selfies.
okay. Yeah, exactly. I will say today, and the last couple of days, I've been in your front yard, Corey. So thank you for that. Right now, I'm at Sand Hollow State Park, and you can probably see in the background there's one of the cottages that Brent was able to stay at. He didn't stay here; he was at Gunlock State Park, but they are beautiful facilities, and I'm glad that Brent had that opportunity. And Fallon, I really apologize. I would have loved to come down to your neck of the woods again, but I'll come down soon. So, but thanks for the invitation. And Corey, we really appreciated seeing you at the Quail Creek State Park campground grand opening. That was a fun celebration, and it's always fun just to celebrate state parks. So appreciate that. Really appreciate all of our board members for the great work that you do. I do want to follow up on something, and I love the excitement that we have about state parks, and we talk about the incredible places, which they are, no doubt. We have incredible state park facilities, and they're in fantastic places. But the other thing I always talk about is our people. Without our people and the folks that work in our state parks, we wouldn't have the experiences that we do. And I know that each of you appreciate them too, but it's fun to see both their engagement and their excitement to host people, to host our visitors. It's very fulfilling just for me to have a little piece of or a vision of what they do every day, and to see how well they do it. Everyone from our park managers to our region managers to our park staff to our seasonal employees. I'm just so impressed with the people that come to work for state parks and really enjoy it. I see it more as a lifestyle than a job oftentimes. So I just wanted to share those.
We agree with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And with that, Jeff has got a full report. I think he's got more than enough to keep us entertained for quite a while. So with that in mind, I'm going to quickly go through the building block requests. I believe I went through them at our previous board meeting. So I'm just going to give you a little reminder and then an update as far as some of the work that we've done in the background to promote and push the building blocks forward. But the first one is asphalt. And again, everywhere we go, every state park that we have asphalt. And that's just a continuous either replacement or maintenance item. The next one is this is the only general fund request that we have, and it's Camp Floyd State Park. It's an add-on, or actually a new museum out there. We're excited about that, but due to the nature of it, it is a general fund request, and general funds are hard to come by. So, but we are working closely with the governor's office on that. The next one is a campground at Wasatch Mountain State Park. We have some really big visions and ideas for Wasatch Mountain State Park, and part of those would be actually replacing our current campground that I'm pretty sure that's an original campground, so it would be over 60 years, probably 65 years old. And we put some patches and tried to improve that campground. But quite honestly, if you've been there, you'll know how small it is, and it really doesn't accommodate our visitors as well as it used to. So we're looking at rebuilding a campground at Wasatch Mountain State Park. The next is current expenses. Current expenses are essentially our everyday costs. And as you know, in your lives, everything costs more today than it did yesterday. So we're asking for more access to our bank account to fill those needs and those gaps that we currently have. The next one is a golf request, and this would be to go into Wasatch Mountain State Park and Wasatch Mountain Golf Course to go in and update the architecture of the course. The course is beautiful. It's 63 years old and is beautiful. It's located in a pristine part of the Heber Valley, but it is 63 years old. And when I talked to a golf architect, he said, golf courses are like people. They have a life expectancy, and the golf course is outlived its expectancy. So we just need to upgrade it and modernize the golf course, and that's what that money will be for. The next is for lodging. We've talked a lot about lodging and the exciting possibilities. You know, I love what Jeff said about expanding the lodging opportunities, and we are doing that. And in fact, later on this afternoon, I'm meeting with Representative Brooks and some students at Dixie Technical College. And the purpose behind that meeting is to talk to them about, you know, our vision for lodging. And these students will actually be drawing and giving us ideas for new lodging opportunities. So instead of buying our cottages and future seasonal housing from a private company, we'll actually work with the college and then with local high schools to build the cottages. And in that way, I think we engage both students and the local communities. You know, we'll be buying local, the materials will be bought local. And then again, those students will have this tremendous opportunity to participate in building lodging. And once it's finished, the idea is to have a placard on the cottages that says who worked on it and the date that they worked on it. So it'll be memorialized that way, which I think is really neat. So after lodging is seasonal housing, which I essentially just mentioned as well. And the last one is a request for some additional staff members, primarily for maintenance staff at our parks. We find that, you know, that's one of our three pillars at state parks. And we need to continually focus on maintaining our parks, and then also to increase wages. So those are our building blocks. Before I move on to my next part, does anyone have a question about building blocks?
I love what you're talking about with local design and cottages and lodging, and then engaging high schools for construction, and there's a lot of programs around. I think that would just save a lot of money and create a lot of local investiture and buy-in. That sounds like a really neat approach. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Any other questions for Scott on that? Okay, please continue. Thank you.
Great. The next and last thing that I want to talk about is Parks Pass. I know we have a few new board members, and I'm looking forward to getting to know each of you better. And because you're new, I want to give you maybe a little bit of background about Parks Pass. Parks Pass is a collaborative project that we have with Southern Utah University and Utah Tech University. And the impetus, or the kind of the background for this project, is to create an app and a digital way to connect with our visitors. But primarily it's to have give people, our visitors, the ability to buy their really whatever they're going to buy. It could be rental equipment, it could be their day use fees, it could be a special use permit, it could be a permit to participate with the Bison Roundup. And in the future, we hope to also have camping and lodging be part of this. But essentially, we would have one platform that would do all of that, including retail. That's another major piece of that. But it's an app where the visitor can do all of those things. And then in addition to making those kinds of purchases, they would also be able, visitors and our staff are able to communicate better through this app. So let's say, you know, Jeff mentioned the desert tortoise at Snow Canyon State Park. Let's say that somebody saw a desert tortoise in the middle of the road. They could instantly get on the app and send a message to the park staff to say, you know, this issue is happening. We want to make you aware of it. And then the state park staff would actually get that message and have the exact pinpointed location of that issue. So it helps with knowing where an issue is. It helps with search and rescue and so many other things. We can share pictures. We can share, you know, thanks and appreciation through the app as well. We can conduct visitor satisfaction surveys. So it's really expansive. Are there questions about the general overview of Parks Pass, and then if not, I'll jump into what the priorities are that we're currently working on.
Yeah, Scott, I have a question and it might not be related, but what's happened with the Friends of Utah Park Pass that they were doing? Has that been changed?
That's a great question, Russ, and you and I need to catch up on that.
Yeah.
I think you're talking about the sponsorships,
Mhm.
and I've been trying to track you down, but I was hoping to get you yesterday and
Okay.
today, but
We can do it.
you and I can talk more about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
And really what Russ is asking about is in the past, we had sponsorships when we had 3 traditional sponsors, and hopefully I don't embarrass Russ, but he was one of our proud sponsors. And a few years ago, we dissolved the statewide Friends group. And when we did that, we weren't able to collect the information about our sponsorships. I'll put it that way. And so what we did is we found a new sponsor going forward, and that's Solo Stoves and Solo Brands that has supported that. And that is also a collaborative effort that we're working on through Parks Pass. They designed our annual pass. And I think Melanie brought annual passes to hand out. If she hasn't already, I believe she'll do that today. But you'll see the design and you'll see the branding on it. It's Solo Brands branding. And quite honestly, Russ will rectify that issue in the future and make sure that you have an opportunity to participate with that as well. And with that, again, I don't want to embarrass you, but we really do appreciate that partnership and the commitment that you've made in the past. So, but let's find a time and you and I can talk a bit more about that.
Fair enough.
Okay, thank you. So I gave you a brief overview of what Parks Pass is. And currently I'm working with the universities to amend our contract to essentially solidify some of the finances and how the finances are, or how the money is delivered to the universities. So we're just shoring up that process. And then we're also amending the contract to allow a Parks Pass to work with us to build a camping reservation platform. So we're right in the middle of that, and it's going well. And I don't foresee too many problems with the contract. There will be some issues in the future as we actually implement the reservation system. And most of that surrounds or revolves around our current reservation system. But I'm confident that we'll be able to work through those issues. So with Parks Pass, I just want to let you know the 3 priorities that we currently have. The number 1 priority we're working on right now is annual passes. And not only selling the passes through Parks Pass and the app, but also validating the passes. We have a lot of technology that we need to deploy probably over the next year. But the technology that we deploy with the annual passes will help us track the passes. It'll let us know where the passes are being used and how often they're being used. And that's data that we currently don't have. It'll also help in the validation process. So when someone comes up to, say, Sand Hollow State Park, there'll be a reader that will read the license plate of the car, and it'll know that car has an annual pass attached to it. And they'll see that it's Corey Cram, and they'll say, when Corey gets up to the gate, the seasonal staff member will already know that it's Corey and be able to welcome Corey into the park, answer any questions. And if not, just wave him on into the park and let him know to have a fun and safe day. So that's a really neat process. There's a lot of moving parts. We're getting very close to it. And I think in the next probably 6 months, we'll have the equipment out in our parks to validate and really track, or not track, but to read the license plates on vehicles and give us that data.
Scott, do you see that getting tied to quagga mussel and boat tracking?
Well, and that's, Corey, that's such a great question, because we have several bodies of water that we do need to worry about or think about with quagga. And that'll be built into the process too. And we're actually hoping that we can build the process in and have a collaborative process with our partner agency, the Division of Wildlife Resources. So we won't have to have 2 different platforms that they'll talk to each other. But that's certainly part of it. We want to protect our water bodies.
Scott, that is awesome. This is Elaine Gisler, that you are moving forward with the technology. I just think that's incredible. Also, in order to get people to sign up for the pass, for instance, out of my office, it would be great to be able to put something online on our social media, in our website, to let people know that these passes are going to be available. So I think the more that we can push that out locally, even within our own DMOs areas, that would be good.
I think that'll be instrumental in moving forward, and I certainly would not refuse that help. It's more than welcome, because we're going to need help in pushing the reservation system and the day use passes. So we'll definitely reach out to the DMOs, and we have great relationships in most part because of Devin, but we'll definitely do that. And I appreciate your willingness to help. There are just two more parts of this. Oh, go ahead.
Leisha, so do I find the app in the App Store?
Not yet.
That's going to be there, right? I was just
So
Clearly.
yeah, I think
I'm looking at the wrong thing.
you are. So Leisha, I love that. And in fact, if you would like to, and I would, this is a request for help, but if you'd like to test the app, just send an email to me and I'll set you up as a tester. The Apple part, the iOS app has been ready for quite some time, but the two people, including myself, that have Androids, it's taken a little bit longer.
Me too.
Okay, so you're the other person that has an Android. I love it.
Yeah.
And Scott, I can show Leisha or anyone else here the test version of the app as well. If they want to see it, I'm running it on both of my phones right now as well. So
That'd be fantastic. So just at the break, you can see the beta, the test site that
Okay,
we're working on.
cool. I just can never figure that out. And I'm like, is it in the App Store? And every time we talk about it, I go to the App Store and I'm like, I know that it's not there, but I try to be techie and not be old, but apparently I'm not.
Search for Scott Strong.
Okay.
So I love that. And what we want to do, I'm going to follow up on something that you said. We want to make this so you don't have to be a techie to get it. Anyone should be able to pick it up and just run with it, right? It should be intuitive and easy to use. Right now, you can go to parkspass.utah.gov and you can do everything online. You can buy an annual pass online, and you can pay a day use fee online, as well as we have certain permits that you can do online as well. But we want to move it from an online application to an actual app store application. And I won't bore you with the details as to how the process works in the background, but it is a web-based app. So connectivity will be imperative to have as well. And that's part of what we're doing with Parks Pass is making sure that every park has connectivity. But the next two things, really, I just wanted to mention that we're moving forward with the day use piece of selling day use passes online. We've actually been doing that for 2.5 years now, and it's worked relatively smoothly. We've had a couple of glitches. We've learned from those glitches, and Megan's smiling because it impacted one of her parks, where there was some coding in the background that sent revenue from one park to another park, which I love that our managers got excited about that, and we're right on top of it and shared that information. And they were excited. I don't think that's a downplay. So anyway, that turned out to be a good thing. And it's technology. It's a new process. We're always going to be learning and growing and improving. So I expect a few bumps, but we want to do as much testing beforehand to eliminate those issues. And then the last one I want to mention is really the biggest piece that we're working on, and that's the camping reservations. It's relatively new. We've been working on it for the last 6 months, and it's it's going to be very impactful to our division as well as our visitors. If any of you have tried to reserve a campsite, and this is just my experience, but maybe you've seen it too. When I go on our current platform, it's very difficult to reserve a spot. Not only just the clunkiness of how to move within the web-based application, but then to also see the archaic maps that they're currently using. And our idea with Parks Pass is to completely transform that. And in fact, we've gone to every single campsite, and we have a 3D video and photo of each campsite. So when you want to look at a particular campsite, so I'm staying at cottage number 2 at Sand Hollow State Park. If you've never been here, but you wanted to see what the view was like from the cottage, you'd be able to click on that image and it'll light it up, and then you can scroll around and you can see that 360 degree view of what I'm seeing right now. So it gives our visitor more information about the campsite, and then the check-in and check-out process is just a lot smoother. So I'm so excited about moving that forward, and the fees that we'll pay to support Parks Pass will be minuscule compared to what we're paying to our private contractor now, as well as our contractor serves, many clients throughout the United States and Canada, and Parks Pass is local. So Antelope Island last year had a problem, I think, with a card reader, and instead of waiting weeks, one of the Parks Pass staff drove from St. George to Antelope Island State Park and delivered that device like the same day. That's the kind of service we'll get from Parks Pass versus, waiting weeks for our current vendor to resolve an issue. And sometimes those issues that we've experienced are just not resolved at all, even in a timely manner. And then we've asked them to do some creative things that they just aren't able to do. They can't prioritize them in their workload. And that's the neat thing about Parks Pass is they're like little sponges, I say. They just can't wait to grasp on or grab onto a new concept and idea and run with it. So it's really exciting. But that is my overview of Parks Pass. Go ahead, Corey.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yesterday at Escalante Petrified Forest State Park, we spoke with some campers, and they were just amazed at the beauty of their campsite and the view and everything. And the comment from them was that the website gave just no concept of how incredible the campsite was. And they suggested something like you're talking about that could give a little more perspective on how incredible these sites are and what people would be getting into. And anyway, just want to pass that on. So that sounds really good. And a question for you is, you talked about day use passes versus annual passes. Are there any trends? I just wondered if you see fewer people purchasing day use passes, are people jumping more into just saying, hey, I'm just going to buy an annual pass? Or what's happening with those trends?
Corey, that's a question that I get often. What's the trend with our annual passes? And one of the thoughts was because we, as you know, we moved from a rolling 12-month pass to a calendar year pass. And the thought was, and I've talked to a couple of legislators and community leaders about this, and they've all thought that we're losing money because we made that transition to a 12-month pass rather than a 12-month rolling pass. And what we've actually seen is we saw growth each year, and I don't have the exact percentage growth, year-over-year growth for the last 10 years, 10 or 15 years. And then last year, we actually saw a spike. So even more people bought the calendar year pass than had been bought in the past. And it's interesting when you then compare that with our day use revenue that we're bringing in, everything's just going up. There's a pretty consistent increase of between 4 and 8% in both of those categories. So, and that represents, I think, again, what Jeff was talking about is more people coming to our parks and enjoying the parks, and us also expanding our facilities. We've expanded day use and camping facilities at many of our parks.
Thank you. Just wanted you to know that Claudia's not here, as you all know, and so we have coordinated amongst our board some friendly banter, tough questions for you. So just don't want you to feel left out.
Oh, that is so nice. And I miss my good friend. Yeah, a lot. She's very unique and I love her. So
Yeah.
thanks.
So along those lines, any other questions for Scott? Okay. Scott, thank you for all you're doing and enjoy your time there in my front yard. And we love and appreciate all your efforts there.
Thank you, Corey.
You're welcome. Laura, you got you next?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, just want to reiterate that it's been great spending time with you guys. I always look forward to these meetings. I'm catching up with you guys and finding out what's going on throughout the state and whatnot, and seeing new places and new things, or seeing them again, but it's always really good. Good times. Okay, so really quick, staffing changes since September, since our last meeting. No retirements in the last couple of months, but we do have 4 upcoming retirements. So we have a couple in the main office, and then just one in the field. Joe Hamby from Rockport's going to retire in a couple of weeks, and then we've got Natalie Harmon from Dornell's going to retire, and then Terry Jeter and Sherry Peterson are going to retire. So we had 3 resignations. Or resignations, terminations in the last 3 months. We had 5 promotions or vacancies filled. So some of them were already mentioned. We had Ben Mraz was promoted to the Willard Bay manager. Kate Pies was promoted to manager Echo. Sand Hollow, Candace was promoted to the park manager. At Palisade, Chase Christensen was hired as the assistant park manager. And then at Lost Creek, Mercer Owens was reclassified as the park manager. We have 2 people in post. Chad Tar graduated for Sand Hollow, so he's there. And then Holly Seuss is going to be going to Echo, but she's still in post right now. We have 8 vacancies at the moment. We have a position at Sand Hollow, East Canyon assistant, Quail Creek manager, Escalante Buildings and Grounds, which I believe the guy accepted the offer. So I think we're good there. So one less. Jordan Ranger, Deer Creek Ranger, Jordan Journey Maintenance, that he just accepted that one. So that's another one. So I guess we're down to 6 then. And then a Rockport Ranger. We had lots of events over the last 3 months. Way too many to mention in your notes. You've got things for each park, but just some of the highlights was obviously the annular solar eclipse, the Ring of Fire events. Those all went really well. Specifically, Ring of Fire Fest at Goosenecks. We've already heard about that. This is really good success. We had a Walleye Classic at Fred Hayes, Trail Hero, and UTV Takeover at Sand Hollow. Several events at our Heritage Park. I think every week, every Saturday here, they've had a kind of like a farmer's market going on here that's been very successful. Ghost of Camp Floyd sold out every single time, and that actually was on the news. If you haven't caught that, it was a really good story on that. Obviously the Bison Roundup, we talked about that one. And then upcoming, we've got Fantasy at the Bay that was mentioned, Holiday Light Wagon Rides at Dornell, Iron Mission Days is coming up, Camp Floyd Christmas, Bear Lake Monster Fest. There's a ton of stuff going on. So I encourage you to check out the parks websites and click on events and see what they've got going on. But there's always lots going on. So our parks are.
Do they still do the Veterans Day events?
The Military Appreciation Day. Yep, that's another one that that's the second weekend in August.
Oh, it's in August, not
It's in-
over Veterans Day.
No, it's
Okay.
it's the second weekend in August. Some parks do offer free entry for Veterans Day. We leave that up to the park managers at this point if they want to do something special. But all the parks have the free entry and special events on Military Appreciation Day. Yeah.
Okay, park plans. We are in the process of, all the parks are in the process of updating their plans. We have one from each region right now, ready for administrative review. So we're in the process of that. So we're gonna be looking at Echo, Snow Canyon, and Utah Raptor. But no meetings have been set yet for those parks. But we are moving along. We're making some progress. We've already mentioned a little bit yesterday, but we have our van tour, employee van tour next week. So we'll be doing this exact same area pretty much, but we'll be going Fremont Indian, Paiute, Otter Creek, Kodachrome, Eswani, and Anasazi. So we're doing a big loop right in the middle. And a lot of the people that are going on these tours have never been to these parks. So it's gonna be really great for our employees to see other parks and, you know, whether they will just gain knowledge about these parks, get some ideas for their own parks, or think, hey, I might want to work there someday. It's just a good collaborative effort for our employees. Yeah. Law enforcement, we've gotten new optics for handguns and training has begun. So that's a new thing. You heard us talk a little bit last night that we have had some significant injuries over the last couple months. We've got 4 injuries, 2 are pretty critical. But it looks like everyone is going to heal from their injuries and be able to, you know, come back to work and everything. It's just gonna take some time. You want me to say anything else on that? Nope.
Well, I can just say I got an update on Charity, our park manager, who was gored by a bison yesterday at Antelope Island. We had the roundup on Saturday, and that rounds them all up into the corrals, and then the following week, our employees help push those bison into the squeeze chutes so that they can go through the fun of pregnancy checks and inoculations and all that. And unfortunately, during this process, there are opportunities to have direct contact with the bison, and we've been doing this for literally decades, a long time, with very few injuries. But unfortunately, yesterday we did have Charity, our park manager, Rockport, who used to work at Antelope Island and did this quite often, had an encounter with a bison and really got some quite serious injuries. Was gored 2 or 3 times, thrown up in the air, and she was life flighted to, I think, the University of Utah. And they were really worried about some pretty serious internal injuries, but I got a report this morning that she's really, even though the injuries are significant, there wasn't the serious damage that they were worried about inside. And so she's going, you know, end of the day, she's going to be okay. It's going to be a long road for recovery, but thankfully she's going to be okay. So that's the latest update.
And then we had another ranger that was injured during OHV tactical training, and he's on the road recovering. He's been going well with that one. Our rangers have responded to several critical incidents. The chief wanted to emphasize that, you know, our rangers are really going through a lot, especially this last couple of months. It's been crazy. A lot of you have seen things on the news, but we had several fatalities. Some of them included a fatality at Echo, which involved a toddler. So that one was pretty hard. We had a fatality at Sand Hollow. It's an OHV accident. We had another East Canyon where a man drove his vehicle into a reservoir on purpose. We had a duck hunter that was a fatality at Utah Lake. And then we also had another one in Jensen that was an OHV accident. And then actually Snow Canyon, but they were hiking, it was hot, and they had medical issues, so that wasn't an accident, but still a fatality that our employees worked through and professionally handled. And that's one thing, you know, even though they're handling these really critical, hard things to do, they're doing them in a really professional manner and doing a really good job, but it does take a toll. On some of the other stuff, we did have a couple search and rescues where, had a good result. At Utah Lake, Josh Holt recovered 3 duck hunters. They were capsized and in the water. They all had life jackets. They were clinging onto the boat when he found them. So he was able to pull them out of the water. And then at Bear Lake, we had a 25-year-old that was on a kayak without a life jacket on. He had been missing for 4.5 hours. And we were able to find him and get him back to shore. And then Dylan Urban assisted in a multiple car accident but ended up pulling a person from the burning vehicle. I mean, so just the kind of crazy things that happened. That's just in the last 3 months, right? Yes. So we've actually just signed a policy. It's peer support, and it's common with a lot of law enforcement agencies. So we just got that enacted, and we've actually utilized it a couple times already with some of these critical incidents. But we have that. We have Blue Coast Hale is a professional mental health counseling. And then, so we do have several resources for that. Yeah. And then we've been pretty good, just, the people that are closest to because a lot of us are friends, right? Not just coworkers. And so we reach out and take care of each other too. Yeah. So, but anyway, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Do you guys have any questions? There's a lot going on.
That's a lot.
That's enough casualties.
Yeah, but there's a lot of good things with the events and then the life saving, and Jeff's going to talk about some other major operational changes, right? Yeah. So I won't cover that type of thing, but he'll cover that. Chime in as needed. But okay.
Anything else for Lauren? Well, thank you. I want to break from decorum for just a second. Jamie, can have you introduce yourself and just give us a little brief, something about where we're at with the Anasazi and
Sure. I
help us
actually
appreciate.
have plans for you guys to all kind of look at our new layout. But so I'm Jamie Skidmore. I'm the park manager here at Anasazi. I've been here for about 4 years, and you guys are getting to see the park right before we are getting ready to close, move out, and embark on a new remodel. The remodel will basically just cover the interior of the building. What you're sitting in now will be our new gift shop. This portion of the wall will kind of get all blown out and open up the floor plan a little bit. So we'll have a much bigger gift shop. It's kind of we're kind of stuffed into a shoebox in there, and our gift shop here has been very successful. It provides about 75% of our revenue. And so hence the want and need for it to become a little bit larger. We're still kind of grappling with losing this space because it's also used, but we'll try and figure out a way to do that elsewhere in the future. So the main parts of this remodel is going to be the gift shop, but also the display. So we'll be updating the whole display space, and I have a couple of big layout printouts for you guys to kind of see that. And then when we do the tour, I can kind of walk you through what will change and how we're going to do that. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Any questions for Jamie?
And then we also have a cool art geometrical site outside. So that's part of what makes our park special. This is actually a 900-year-old archaeological site. The ancestral Puebloan culture lived here for about 50 years. And this site is, I like to refer to it kind of as the center of town. It's still the center of town. We get a lot of people who come to the park and are like, where's Boulder? You're in it. Yeah, so the archaeological site itself was kind of their center of operations, and Boulder, the town of Boulder itself is all an archaeological site. We have neighbors with pit houses in their backyard. We've got a ridge over here that used to be used for like solar kind of ways of telling like the calendar and when the solstice was going to happen, that kind of thing. We also have some ancient irrigation pathways on property that's like really close to here that they basically diverted water away from where they had a campsite and probably diverted it into some type of holding mechanism in order to irrigate crops, that kind of thing. So pretty cool area and spot. We'll kind of get into that into the tour.
Thank you.
Welcome, and I'm glad to have you guys.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Scott said you have to give them the behind the scenes tour. That's what that.
Oh, yeah, we get that too. Yeah.
So-
We'll get a little bit of that too.
All right, Jeff, we'll jump to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Great to be here with all of you. Sorry I missed the last meeting, but it's good to be here today and hang out with you yesterday during the tour, and just want to say welcome to Elaine and Jack and Fallon. I've had the opportunity and pleasure to work with Fallon for a few years. I think it's kind of interesting that our relationship kind of started out on a sour note, if you remember right. Maybe not the most positive call in the world, but hopefully it's improved greatly. It has on my Anyway.
We could only go up.
Yeah. It's interesting how some relationships start on that end of the spectrum, but at least from my perspective, it's greatly improved. And Jack, it's been great to get to know you. I haven't had a chance to work with you directly in the legislature, but it's great to have you on board. And Wayne, all three of you just seem like you're going to be a great fit for the board. So welcome aboard. I think it's the best agency in the state of Utah. And you know, when I'm up presenting at the Capitol and rubbing shoulders with my counterparts up there with other agencies, I always feel kind of spoiled and blessed to work for just such a fun agency and awesome agency, DNR and state parks. So I am biased, but I think our agency is pretty awesome. So anyway, great to be with you today. Leisha, you had asked about veterans recognition. I just wanted to point out, we do still do Military Appreciation Day, the second Saturday of every August. And that actually came from many board meetings ago when we had to eliminate some benefits that we had previously offered to veterans due to moving to the self-funded model, and just a desire to find a way to recognize military and veterans. And so that's why we do that. But I specifically just wanted to let you all know that for Veterans Day this year, we're hosting the Follow the Flag organization. If you're familiar with them, they have the giant flag. From what I understand, it's the biggest flag in the United States. They hang it in strategic locations throughout the state in different parts of the year, but they're going to be hanging it above Snow Canyon, at the bottom of Snow Canyon, for Veterans Day. You know, they'll fly above Snow Canyon for that entire week. It's 150 feet long, 78 feet wide, and it's going to be amazing. But
Do you know the name on that?
so that's there'll be a flag ceremony on Veterans Day, Saturday. I think it's November 11th. And it'll fly that whole
And then
week.
it'll go that whole week because then we have you
It'll be
really cool.
awesome. We're looking
Yeah,
forward
that would
to
be
it.
cool.
I don't think we've ever hosted that flag at any of our state parks before, so this will be a first for us.
That they had up across the canyon and they stopped it.
Yep.
Spectacular.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm looking forward to it.
I've seen pictures of, yeah, the one in.
Yeah, they brought it to Brigham in 2019 for our Golden Spike stuff, and you just don't know. Yeah.
That's cool.
It's gonna be amazing with the red and white
Mhm.
rocks and
That's gonna
sandstone
be
in the back.
amazing.
It's gonna be awesome. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. And your comment kind of proves that.
That was like a
thought
personal
with
thing.
me,
We've just
so.
been trying to figure out where all the Veterans Day stuff in our community is happening. So I was like, I know state park says something, but I couldn't remember. But I do remember now that it's in August.
We have the pass as well.
And are they self-funded?
I'm pretty sure they are. Yeah, I think it's all through donations.
Okay, that's all.
So, yeah, pretty cool. So I thought I'd just highlight a few things that have happened over the last year and give you some updates and talk about construction and the upcoming legislative session and anything else you want to talk about. I'll start with ribbon cuttings and groundbreakings. I wish every year could be as fun as this year has been. It's so cool to open up new facilities like what we saw yesterday at Escalante Petrified Forest State Park. And we've had a bunch of them. For those of you who are new, State Parks has had just a huge influx of funding that's come in the name of expansion and improvement of our state parks. Over $250 million over the last 4 legislative sessions. About 200 million of that has been general fund money, which has never happened before to that level. Probably about and I'm just approximately 50 million of it was out of our restricted account funds that we generated with these to go into these improvement projects. And it's kind of interesting, 3 years ago when we got the first big chunk of it, it's kind of funny how people that aren't in the construction world and don't have an understanding, that they were already calling me before we got the funding on. So when are you going to be cutting the ribbon? And it's not quite like just hiring a contractor to remodel your kitchen. There are a lot of hoops to jump through with environmental and cultural clearances and permitting and bidding and design and engineering. And these are big multi-million-dollar projects. But the good news is now 2-3 years down the road, we're to the point where we're actually opening these facilities up, and just super exciting. I made a list of this year's ribbon cuttings where we've opened new facilities. The first one was a new campground at Sand Hollow State Park in March. We had an archery range that was opened at Antelope Island State Park, multi-use trails and trail improvements, new trails at Fremont Indian State Park. Echo State Park, one of our newer state parks, has had a complete remodel, just really from the ground up restoration. This year we opened up the new day use area, boat ramp and cabin village there at Echo State Park. And that was super exciting. New campground at Deer Creek State Park, a new day use area and beach area at Rockport State Park, a new campground, the one with the elaborate ribbon cutting at Quail Creek that Corey talked about. And then we had 2 groundbreakings for our new state parks. One for a new state park and one for an existing state park. The first one at Red Fleet, and that one is also a complete ground up restoration, and it really needed it. I don't know if it was 60s or 70s, but you could definitely tell going into there that it had been a long time, and not one of our better designed campgrounds to say the least. It was kind of like a Walmart parking lot at a really pretty location, but anyway, that's going to be an exciting project. We cut the ribbon on that one. I'm hearing that summer of next year is what the completion date is. Certainly we're going to push for sooner than that. I think a lot of the completion date is going to be dependent on what the winter's like and how early we can start construction next spring, but that's a super exciting one. And then in September, we cut the ribbon or did a groundbreaking for Utah Raptors State Park. And that one has been a long time coming, not only because of all the hoops that you got to jump through with construction, but it's been incredibly hard to find reliable water there. We knew that was going to be a challenge, and it was. Our first well, it was over 1,000 feet deep. We did find water, but it really wasn't usable water. Second time was the charm. It's not great water, but it's potable water, and that's what's important. So I can't remember how old the water is, but I want to say 25,000 years old, something like it's old. Does that sound about right? You're usually our geology expert, but it's really old water. But the important part is it's usable, and so we're going with it. But that one's moving along really well. We're hoping that we'll be cutting the ribbon the end of next year on that one. So it's going to be an amazing state park. Just a great year for water. We all know we had an exceptional winter, and after struggling in the previous years with our water parks, with just having adequate water levels, it was so awesome to have a year where most of them were full. The exception was the severe drainage, and specifically Yuba Reservoir, which for those of you who don't know Yuba, I know Yuba really well because I worked there for 13 years. But it's the 5th largest body of water in Utah, and unfortunately, we decided, not we, but the owners of the dam decided to do an upgrade, a safety upgrade on that dam. It was during the drought, not knowing that we were going to have this exceptional year to store water. And so even though there was a lot of water to be had, we could only raise it up to a certain level because of the construction that was going on. So anyway, we still made it through the year with adequate water to boat on, just not as much as we had hoped for there, but just an exceptional year for our water parks, and they're a big part of our recreation. Our visitation continues to go up. I can't remember if Scott mentioned it, but we haven't quite reached the COVID level year where we eclipsed 12 million visitors, but we're up another 200,000+ visitors this year, and we're back up over 11 million. And our parks are busy. And if you've been out recreating, you've seen the people out there on the trails and in campgrounds. And I still can't get a reservation in our state parks. I was trying to get to go to Palisade this year for summer, and I thought I was really smart. In January, I marked my calendar for, okay, this is the day that they open up. And I didn't call like right at 12:01 midnight. I waited until like 10 o'clock and they were all gone. So there is a ton of demand for camping in our parks. And that's awesome when you're in the recreation business and you're selling that. But the fact of the matter is we need more opportunities for recreation. And that's what the expansion and improvement is doing for us. Last thing I wanted to mention was we had a DNR, Department of Natural Resources employee satisfaction survey that rolled out last year that honestly we didn't do as good as we had hoped on the scores that we got from employees. I think there were some problems with the way the questions were asked, but there were some things that came out of the results of that survey that we really took and ran with. There are things that you can always do to improve employee satisfaction. We kind of concentrated on 3 main areas of focus: doing better with communication, offering better and increased training opportunities, and just providing better support from our administrative side, and not just from the Salt Lake office, but also from our regional offices. I always say that our administrative team in Salt Lake is only there to support what we do in the field. We're all about state parks, and I tell our employees, you don't work for us, we work for you. We're your support. That's the whole reason that we exist. And so, those 3 areas I think are just exceptionally important in improving employee satisfaction. And we had a new survey that was done this year, and our scores have improved greatly. And I think a lot of it is because we've really done a lot better with communication. When I saw low scores on that, I thought, we can always communicate better, whether the survey is flawed or not. We can always do better with that. And some of the things that we've done to improve communication with our employees in our division is Scott, Lori, and I have each taken a week each month where we provide an update on what's going on and give some positive thoughts or talk about cool things that are coming in the future. We hosted a division-wide employee conference last spring in Washington County that I think went exceptionally well. Just really good training, great opportunity for our employees to rub shoulders and just get to know each other. We've had regularly scheduled conversations, most of them online, on important work topics like accounting, the Parks Pass program, how to manage our cottages. The idea being that a lot of the issues that our park managers are dealing with are not necessarily unique to their park, and if we can just all get together and talk through things, we can learn from each other, and that's improved communication. And we've just tried to do a better job with getting out and talking to our employees in the field. You learn so much from those one-on-one conversations, and you get out of that formal meeting setting and just get to know really what's happening in the parks. And I think that makes a huge difference. And I think Corey mentioned it, but we want to hear that feedback from you. And when you're visiting our parks, talk to our employees. And I love to hear the positive things that you mentioned about our state parks, but if you hear negative things, I want to hear that too, because if there's things that need to be addressed, we need to be aware of them and working on them. So just encourage you to do that. We're going to continue to look for opportunities to improve training, and we did some brainstorming sessions with our employees on just getting ideas of, what can we do better in the world of training? How can we do better to support our employees? And we've got lots of things to work on with that. But it's been mentioned from a few people already, but we love our employees. They're the backbone of our agency. What I love about our employees is they're here because this is their passion. This isn't just a job, but they're here because they love recreation and they love working outdoors and in the field of natural resources, and that makes a big difference. We saw Brandon and Chad last night. You can just see their passion for what they do and their work product, and I just think that's awesome. I wanted to talk briefly about law enforcement. We have a really big change that we're right at the beginning of with DNR. That involves our law enforcement. We've housed our own law enforcement responsibilities and certification within state parks for the last 40, 50 years. Done it in-house, had fully certified law enforcement officers. That's how I started with this agency. And Wildlife Resources has done the same. Our new sister agency, Recreation, has their own law enforcement. There was a feasibility study done starting last fall that looked at the possibility of consolidating law enforcement. So instead of parks having their own, wildlife or recreation and forestry has a very small component of law enforcement. The thought was, if we combine all those agencies, the law enforcement responsibilities into a new division where they specialize in law enforcement. And, is that a better path to move forward? Does that make more sense? A lot of the reasoning behind this question coming to the department has come with liability. If you watch what's happened with law enforcement nationally, a lot of big stuff that's happened and a lot of concern and emphasis on making sure that law enforcement officers are properly trained, that they're ready to respond to critical incidents, and concern about, especially with our state parks law enforcement, are we expecting too much of our law enforcement officers? Because you look at Chad, for example, at Escalante State Park, he's not just the law enforcement officer, he's an employee that wears many, many hats. And I always say that, bless you, especially a park manager, and if you're law enforcement, you're not just the law enforcement officer, you're also the administrator, you're the supervisor, you're the sewer department, the hosting department, the accountants. I mean, you're everything. I always say our parks are like running cities, and there are so many things that you need to know with law enforcement and so many certifications that you need to be up to date with, and knowing how to respond to critical incidents. The question was, is that too much? Is that too much to expect? And could that create a big liability for the department and the state if one of these officers who has so many of these responsibilities has to respond to a critical incident, which, as Lori talked, there's a lot of that stuff that goes on in our parks. So it was about proficiency, also about consistency with DNR. I think it's been a challenge for the different divisions to have a consistent approach to law enforcement. And I know that State Parks does law enforcement different than Wildlife Resources for a number of reasons. Combining training, we've all done training on our own over the years. I've always complained about that for the 30 plus years that I've worked for DNR. Just never made sense to me, but by combining training, there can be some efficiencies, but also ensuring consistency in how law enforcement is done. What else? Pool services. So making sure that evidence is properly handled, making sure that how we access private information is done right. There's a lot of things that each of the divisions are doing on their own, and if you pull those services, there's some efficiencies that can come with that. Making sure that there's a direct line of supervision with law enforcement. If something really bad does happen, that the law enforcement chain of command is laid out in a way to where if an officer has a critical situation, they can call their supervisor, and their supervisor can help direct them, down the right path on how to address that situation. And then the last one was the last major goal that they thought was important was achieving accreditation. Many law enforcement agencies are becoming accredited, and with those different accreditations, there are specific, how do I explain it? Ways that the org chart is laid out. Basically, they follow best practices of law enforcement agencies to make sure that things are handled properly. You combine all this, and Joel Ferry, our department director, decided that it really does make sense. I'll be honest with you, I've had a lot of concerns about consolidation and specialization with state parks. This isn't the first time that this topic has come up. It's been brought up at least 4 times over the last 20 years and never really moved forward because there is a cost to specialization. I've seen, you look at UPD, for example, in the Salt Lake area, and how, I don't know all the history of how Unified Police Department was created, but I think it was along some of these same terms of consistency and efficiencies, and the different cities pooled together and thought that under one law enforcement structure that might be a better way. And there's good and bad that can come from that. When I was in Sanpete County, I remembered as a park ranger at Palisade, Manti City decided to not offer law enforcement services in contract with Sanpete County. And when you don't have your own law enforcement agency that works for you and reports to you, you lose some of that direct control, and you lose the ability of how, when, why, where law enforcement is done in your city. And like I've mentioned before, our parks are kind of like cities. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you that I didn't have some concerns with this, and I still do have some concerns about how this is going to move forward. And I think I could argue pluses and minuses about it, but on September 11th, we had a meeting with the department where they rolled out the decision that they're going to do this, and it's going to have a dramatic impact on our agency. It's really going to change our world. We've been doing this, like I say, for 40 to 50 years at least, housing law enforcement in our agency, and splitting that off and creating this new division is going to make some really big impacts, pluses and minuses for our parks. What we've asked our park managers to do is come up with a new staffing plan, because law enforcement currently is such a big part of how we staff our parks. And what they've all had to do, and they've been working on this for the past month, and we have the information, we're just working on compiling it. But how do we staff our parks now that have had law enforcement in the past? And it's not as easy as just saying that, well, okay, Yuba, for example, has had a park manager, assistant park manager, and park ranger, all of them law enforcement. You take those law enforcement officers out, it's not as easy as just saying, okay, well, we'll just replace those with a non-law enforcement park manager, assistant park manager, and ranger. Because the challenge is going to be that we're still going to need to pay for law enforcement at the state parks, and we're going to need to pay for those law enforcement positions or non-law enforcement positions in the parks. And so is Yuba a 2-person full-time state park right now? Maybe could be. A lot of the responsibilities that many of our parks have in the off season are directly related to law enforcement. So long story short, this is going to change a lot about how we staff our parks. And and also how we take care of law enforcement. So we've asked our park managers to reevaluate how the parks are staffed with non-law enforcement employees, and also what the expectation is moving forward on how our parks are covered with law enforcement. So I'll use Yuba as an example again. What we don't want is for law enforcement to be in the future, for our state parks to be as needed only, basically a response, kind of a response method of, unfortunately, like a lot of law enforcement, they just simply don't have the numbers to be on site, and so get into that mode where they respond only when there's problems. Well, we don't want to move to that in our state parks. One of the things that I think we've done a great job at with law enforcement in state parks is being proactive and having a law enforcement presence on site, and they're talking to our customers, and it really makes a difference. I remember when I was doing law enforcement in the boating world, and I'd get on the boat, go across the reservoir, and it was amazing how people put their life jackets on, and the ski flag goes up, and presence makes a really big difference. Well, what we've asked our park managers is, when do we need law enforcement on site? So if there's not a law enforcement officer assigned to Yuba State Park, when do we need them scheduled there? And that's kind of hard to think about when you're moving from basically a 7 days a week to, what are the critical needs? And it's going to be times like weekends and holidays when they're packed there. It's going to be like the after hours time. So I always say tucking people into bed at night. And so they know that they need to quiet down at 10 o'clock and during big events. And so our park managers are working on those law enforcement plans, because we want to be proactive with this and not have that dictated to us by the new Division of Law Enforcement, and that we'll be in the driver's seat with that. So we're working on that right now. I talked about increased costs. It is going to cost money to specialize. I can't remember the exact amount, but I think the department was looking for a $5 million ongoing general fund request to support the increased costs that this will bring for creating the new Division of Law Enforcement. We haven't figured out what this is going to cost state parks on our side operationally, and I don't think we will until we flesh out these plans on what it's going to do. From what I hear, they're running into a little bit of resistance, as you would expect. That's a big number to ask, and our first step in asking for funding from the legislature is to get a thumbs up from the governor's office, and the governor's office is rightly so asking a lot of questions about, how do you justify this, and where these responsibilities have always been mostly covered with restricted funding. From state parks, from our fee money, from DWR, they have their own restricted funding. It's going to be a tough hurdle to overcome. So I think what we know for sure is that there will be a consolidation and that there will be a new Division of Law Enforcement. That's been decided. What we don't know is, to what level will that new division be able to be built, and how many people will be able to be brought in for the pooled services and some of the other things that the department is hoping to do with law enforcement. So I guess my message with this is that this is going to be a big change for us. It's going to impact how our parks are run. Like I mentioned before, I think there's positives and negatives. One of the positives that I see to it is we've heard from our law enforcement park managers for years now that I've got too much on my plate. I just can't cover all my responsibilities. This is going to change that. It's one less thing that our on-site employees are going to need to worry about, and they can focus more on managing the park and building the park and being a business manager as a park manager. And so I think that's going to help in a lot of ways, and really focus on our three core responsibilities for all of our employees in state parks, and their customer service, taking care of the facilities, and building the business, all of which are you know, in most ways, not law enforcement related responsibilities, but you probably got a lot of questions about, you know, what this might look like. And I guess, like I say, my message is this is in the works, but it is going to have a really big impact on how law enforcement is done, how our parks are managed in the future. And there's more to come on this.
When will it go into that?
So, thank you for that. So the thought is that this is very complicated and it's a big change for DNR and especially for state parks, but also for the other DNR agencies. They're looking at a 4-year implementation to get it into effect. And the idea is that it'll be fully functional by July 1 of 2028. Now, as we've been working on the details of how this works, we've actually been pushing for a quicker implementation because when you think about this logistically, if we're building the new division of law enforcement and they have their law enforcement officers and we're still housing law enforcement officers within state parks, how does that chain of command work? It gets really messy. And so part of the reason why they wanted a 4-year implementation is because this has a really big impact on our in-house law enforcement employees, many of whom joined for the variety of responsibilities. And that's who I'm most concerned about is our employees that this impacts. And it's a really big impact. If you're a law enforcement officer for DNR and you're on a law enforcement retirement, if basically the employees in the situation are going to have to make a decision on which track they want to follow. Do I stay in state parks as an administrator and manager and run the operations of state parks, or do I go to the law enforcement track with the division of law enforcement and be a law enforcement officer? And for people like me that, you know, I signed up to be a park ranger because I love the variety of responsibility. Variety to me is exciting and fun, and you know, you never knew what you're going to be doing, you know, day to day, and that made the job fun and enjoyable. I think it's going to be a really tough decision, and honestly, I don't know what I'd do if I was in the field, but because it's such a tough decision, they wanted to allow for a 4-year implementation. So what we're pushing for right now is that, hey, if we're doing this law enforcement consolidation, let's pull the trigger and make it effective July 1 of next year, 2024, so that logistically we can make this function, but give employees in this situation 4 years to decide which agency they want to work for. One of the complicating factors is the retirement system. The public safety retirement system is, in a lot of ways, clearly better than the public employee retirement system. You're looking at a 10-year difference on when you can retire and higher percentages of a pension in the future. And so it's not just a factor of a change of responsibility. It's for the law enforcement folks that might choose to go the non-law enforcement track. It's also the acknowledgement of saying that I'm going to commit to another 10 years for the state of Utah. And that's a really big deal.
And how does that change their current salary?
Salaries shouldn't be
Salaries stay the
affected.
same, shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Stay the same.
But I'm on the law enforcement retirement because I came up in that system and spent 19 years doing law enforcement in the field. When I moved to administration, the retirement systems looked at that differently, and we had the flexibility to be able to keep people that came from the law enforcement arena of state parks. If they moved into an administrative position that was still connected to law enforcement, basically supervising law enforcement, they could stay within the public safety retirement system. Well, this changes all that, because if you take law enforcement out of state parks and put it in a new division, then I'm no longer in the chain of command. And so I can't justify, or we as an agency can't justify staying on the law enforcement retirement. So it's very impactful. It's super complicated. It's a big change. And like I say, I could argue positives and negatives to it, but it is happening right now. Yes,
Jeff, was this
generated, this consolidation generated within natural resources, or was it legislatively mandated?
It was generated from the department.
Can I just register an opinion?
Sure.
With all my experience through education, through both cities and towns, through the legislature, private business, I am not a fan of consolidations. Rarely do they have the outcome that they predict. That's just my opinion. And I don't know if this is an irreversible trend. It sounds pretty much irreversible, but I'm just saying as a board member and as a citizen, I'm not a fan because I haven't seen them achieve what they claim they're going to achieve.
Yeah.
All the way from cities merging together to consolidating committees in the legislature. It doesn't matter. I mean, in our county, I'll give you an example. They consolidated the clerk and the auditor a few years ago. Well, guess what they just did? They separated them again because they found it was unworkable.
Yeah.
I'm just not a fan. So for what it's worth, which is probably nothing.
So no, I appreciate that perspective.
Yeah.
So I think we'll see some legislation come out of this. And Director Ferry is pushing this hard. So it's coming within the, not the division, but from the department.
Right.
And support there. I guess still need to see what the governor's office, where they stand on this, but and I think the legislation will probably, there's gonna have to be funding tied to that. And that could weed out some of these issues as far as retirement, and hopefully that can be a positive thing and we'll be able to make the best of wherever this goes.
Yeah, and there will be legislation this session. And I think a lot of the reason for that is tied to funding. You know, it's an avenue to be able to attach a fiscal note to, but how that's going to play out is really going to depend on what happens with the current review from the governor's office, because, you know, as an agency, we can only speak for what's in the governor's budget and what the governor is pushing for. So, of course, the legislature, as you know, can do whatever they want with it from there. And they like to
build the
talk about that
sword of
sometimes.
truth. Or not.
Yeah, anything else on law enforcement?
I have a lot of questions, but how many park managers are law enforcement as well?
Most.
Yeah.
Well, and that's really, you know, you talk about you talk about the employees, and that's, I mean, that's gonna be a gut wrencher.
So one thing that I should mention, something that we're arguing for right now is that in this legislation, there'll be an opportunity to grandfather people that are in the public safety retirement system, which to me would be key for us to be able to retain much of
I
our
agree.
experienced people in this position, because the law enforcement retirement part of this is my biggest worry, that's going to be a huge motivator for them to stay in divisional law enforcement, and then we lose that experience that we have in state parks. And Joel Ferry's on board with that, and so that should be in the legislation. But I think that's the key to the success for us of making this work on the operational side, because that's a huge factor.
Well, and I can't help but think, I'm like you, I've got a million questions and how to actually phrase them. But one thing I wonder about is you have this law enforcement agency now. Not everybody who's in state parks or any of the other agencies for that matter, they're not gonna, I mean, that you could have a huge law enforcement agency if they let everybody who wanted to, you know, potentially, right?
They're going
There
to
actually will be
reduce
a
the
limit.
numbers.
Right, they're gonna reduce the numbers, and I don't know, you know, it's,
So there's not a spot for everyone. You
There's
can say,
not.
There's not gonna be,
there's not, but you know, there's those that law enforcement piece is in their blood. I mean, it's a different mentality, you know, and so that's still, it's gotta be a
And I would say how this is viewed from the employee level depends on how they see law enforcement. You know, for me personally, I didn't become a park ranger to be a cop, right? I enjoyed the law enforcement responsibility part of it. And honestly, I would argue that it was one of the more fun responsibilities because it's tied to the stuff that Mr. Stedman over there sells in his business. You get paid to ride snowmobiles and dirt bikes and personal
Boats
watercraft. And I'm like, heck yeah, sign me up. You know, that's the fun part. But what I'm saying is that some of our law enforcement, they really do love law enforcement, and I think their preference is to be 100% law enforcement. So for some, they're looking at this as, you know, a real positive. For some of the what I'll call more traditional park rangers, like me, they're like, well, I really don't want to be a cop. But I like the law enforcement. So they're really struggling with, you know, where do I go?
And the retirement side of it is a huge one.
So if we can fix the retirement part of this, that's going to go a long way in not losing a lot of our experienced folks. Yeah.
So if the 5 million isn't approved, then what happens?
That's the big question. And
You know what I think will happen? I think if this consolidation occurs, I think you'll have those 4 years of adjusting this and that, and you'll end up with certain law enforcement personnel assigned to specific parks or specific areas anyway, and it will be not that much different than what we have right now. I don't know. I'm skeptical.
Well, it'll probably be less.
Yeah.
That's what I'm.
For example, yesterday we were in Cochrane. Let's say law enforcement in Cochrane was on an as-needed basis. Let's say there was an incident there. It could take an hour at least for a law enforcement officer to get there. And in that amount of time, things are out of control.
Yeah, because Chad responds here and to Cochrane.
Can you imagine?
He's actually covering 3 right now.
Yeah.
But when I think what happens if the general fund money isn't acquired is the restricted money is used.
Okay.
Which is a concern on our end.
Because it
because
takes away from it, sure.
Yeah, that's, just like general fund, we have, you know, there's not a never ending supply of restricted funding either. And that's what we have to run our agency. So there's a lot of questions about how this is going to work, and we're working out those details right now with the department. And that's why I say that the decision to consolidate was made, and that's the direction that we're going as a department and agency. What that looks like is going to depend a lot on what happens during the session. That's where we're at. So.
Yeah, and there's a lot involved when we're going through the park plans. I mean, we're looking at equipment and responsibility changes, and you know, because the boats go away, but we're not gonna, you know, we're gonna still have search and rescue responsibilities.
Sure.
Yeah.
But those won't no longer be our, you know, we won't have access to those things.
So like your park manager that's non-law enforcement won't be out on the boats.
Not patrolling.
Yeah, but because only law enforcement
Right.
will be allowed to use those boats.
Yeah.
And will they be housed in the state park, so they'll be taken out and they'll bring them in when they choose to? It's like all up in the air.
Right now, that's
details.
Yeah, there are so many details to be worked out, but right now, the answer to that question is they're planning on having law enforcement assigned to the bigger parks. So like Jordanelle, Bear Lake, Sand Hollow, Willard Bay, probably not going to see much of a difference other than the chain of command for those folks is going to be different than what it is now. But the more rural parks, which is most of our parks, likely won't have law enforcement assigned to them. And it'll be, and this is why it's so important for us to come up with what our expectation, what law enforcement looks like, because I don't want to move to that kind of more typical law enforcement model where law enforcement's only there when they get called. Well, a lot of times that's too late.
Yeah.
So they need to be there during those peak times, and that's what we're pushing
I mean,
for.
there's something to be said. I didn't realize they were law enforcement. Wasn't something I ever looked at. When I went yesterday, when we met with Chad and I saw he has a gun and he's like, that's pretty cool because people are gonna think twice about
Yeah.
doing anything and.
That's right.
you
Well,
know,
that-
I
that
didn't
goes to
realize
presence.
Yeah, the presence,
Presence
exactly.
makes a
And
huge
that's what I was
difference.
thinking yesterday, and I didn't realize we had law enforcement as department, and I
Yeah,
thought
we-
that was
It's the
really
majority,
awesome.
yeah.
Is it the majority? Wow.
We have, it's basically 1/3 of our agency is law enforcement, so 60,
Wow.
about 60 law enforcement officers in state parks.
Well, and I know, like our local sheriff's department is shorthanded, like increased calls over the year. There's 5 guys down. There's no money in the budget to hire 5 guys. And so they're gonna have a hard time covering you, but more than they already do. In fact, I'm sure that Jess and his team are helping cover the county more than the county's helping cover them in some cases.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be, there'll be a lot of pushback from every sheriff.
Well, what I know for sure is the counties don't have extra time to take on responsibilities. And so if we don't take care of ourselves, then the counties are going to be coming to us, wanting funding to cover their
Just like they do the
responsibilities.
towns that don't have their own police forces.
Lisa has a question. Can we go to her? Lisa, go
ahead,
ahead.
She can ask.
Yeah, I just typed it in the chat box. I'm curious about the process that you're anticipating over this 4-year time period, because I imagine there's going to be multiple iterations of, well, we think this is what should happen, this is what should happen, and so I'm curious what that might look like, and at what points the board might have opportunities to provide feedback, if that's a possibility.
So right now, as far as process, the department is putting together a transition team, which will include key members of each division that's impacted from this change in law enforcement to work out those details. And that's honestly what's honestly a little bit scary right now, is because there really isn't a detailed plan on how we're going to make this work. It's a decision to move this direction. We've got to figure out how do we make it work on the ground. And to me, that's where the work really happens. That's going to take a lot of work and effort. And again, that's why as a division, we decided as soon as the decision was made in September that we're going to come up with our own plan of how this works for state parks. Even if it isn't our law enforcement division, we want to set the direction. We don't want to have the direction set for us. And so, Lisa, we're actively working on those details right now, but I don't have a whole lot of detail to share. As far as board interaction, honestly, I'm not sure what to tell you on that. I don't know that, the change has been made, the decision has been made, and I don't see that changing. But certainly as a board member, if you'd like to reach out to any of our department staff and express your thoughts about what this does for our agency or DNR, you're welcome to do that. And I'm not sure how to say this. So as a division lead, I've got to support this change, and there's many in our division that have a lot of concerns and or don't want to go this direction. And what I've told all of them is that, this is happening and we're going to make it happen. And just like happens with legislation to us quite often, you don't necessarily have to agree with what happened with the legislation, but once it's in law, that's what we're charged to do and follow. And I think our agency, I kind of equate this change with the change that we had in 2011 when we moved from a traditional government agency that went to the table asking for tax money every year to a self-funded agency. That was a dramatic change for our agency. This one is at that same level. This is going to have really big impacts, positive and negative. And Jack, I hope that they can follow through with everything that they say that they're going to do. I guess we'll see what happens with that. But we're going to do the best that we can as an agency to make sure that our parks are covered, because law enforcement is a huge part of what makes our parks successful. And in my opinion,
From the others.
yeah, and
Yeah.
what I've always said is that, you know, a big selling point for people coming to state parks is because they know that there's going to be someone there to take care of problems or take care of issues before they become problems. Whereas if you're in many recreation sites and let's say you're camping with your family and you have a group next to you that is causing problems, you're kind of on your own. And that's a huge selling point for state parks, and I don't want to lose that.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay, I can move on, and if you want to have offline conversations, you're welcome to. This is one of my favorite subjects.
Can I interrupt you guys for just a second? Would you guys prefer to eat inside or out? Very nice outside.
I love
Yeah?
outside. You guys
All
are
right,
great.
then we'll
Outside's
set
fun.
up outside. for you.
Great, thank you.
Those
Thanks,
are
Jamie.
drinks right there in those, so. we don't
Okay,
have a-
I don't have a whole lot more. Construction update. So I was talking earlier just about the huge influx of money that's come to state parks. And, you know, we had quite a few ribbon cuttings. We have a lot of other projects that are in the works right now. Antelope Island, we're building a visitor center expansion and adding an IMAX theater out there. And this is a full-blown IMAX theater, 200 seats.
Wow.
This is the whole enchilada, as my note shows. But, so this is a project that started out as a $10 to $12 million expansion of that visitor center, kind of taking on a phase 2 that was planned many years ago. And Speaker Wilson and Joel, my boss, who was Representative Perry at the time, had a bigger vision of what we might do out there in building an IMAX theater to show just an incredible movie that's in production right now, to help people understand why they need to care about the Great Salt Lake and why the Great Salt Lake is important to the state of Utah and the nation and really the world, just because of all the environmental benefits and like all the benefits that come from the park. And they're making this IMAX movie, this 3D movie, to help illustrate why we need to care about it. The idea being that school children will have in their curriculum a requirement to go out there and learn about the Great Salt Lake, and I think it's about building future advocates for why we need to care, why we need to conserve water, why is the Great Salt Lake important. I think locally, a lot of people look at the Great Salt Lake as a stinky, buggy, I hate to say cesspool. That's maybe a little bit dramatic, but think about what I think about Antelope Island and how the majority of our visitation to Antelope Island comes from outside. It's not local visitation. It's from out of state. It's international. And I think it's a shame. And a lot of it is because of the perception that I don't want to go out to Antelope Island because, it's filled with bugs and, the water stinks. And when in reality, yeah, there are bugs there in late April through mid to late May. But for the rest of the year, it's awesome. It's a great escape, and it's right on the Wasatch Front. The bugs, okay, so you walk through them, but once you get into the water, it's beautiful. And it's very unique. And I think there's not only a huge opportunity for us as an agency to build our visitation base in helping educate people that it really is an incredible recreation resource, but this new visitor center and IMAX theater is going to help people understand why the Great Salt Lake is important. So anyway, that one's in the works. It's currently in design. We're hoping to start construction next spring and finish that one up about mid 2025. Next one is a power line project for Goblin Valley State Park. Goblin Valley has always been on solar power, and Goblin Valley was increased in size from the Dingle Act, the federal Dingle Act, and I can't remember, was it 2/3 more? Can't remember.
It went from 3,000 acres to 9,000 acres.
Thank you.
Ish.
And I forgot you were on board, but we had a substantial increase in the property size at Golden Valley, and we want to do more. We want to offer more opportunities for our visitors, but power has always been a huge struggle for us. We got some funding. It was restricted funding several years ago from the legislature, and we've been working since then on getting environmental clearances. I want to say it's like a 20 to 24 mile power line that would go in, and as you would expect, there's a lot of hoops to jump through. Across the BLM property, and getting those cultural and environmental clearances is what we're working on. But we're getting close to finishing that, and hope to have the construction started on that in the spring, with it finishing the end of next year. Another utility project, we need to replace the water line at Great Salt Lake State Park. It currently goes out to Stansbury Park. I want to say it's like 10, 12 miles. There's parts of that power line that are 20 feet deep. There's leaks that we can't fix. And, water, you don't have water in a park, it's kind of hard to run the park. So it's critical and could shut down the park. We got that funded last session. It's an $8 million project, if I remember right. But it's going to change our world there at Great Salt Lake. That one's underway. We're hoping to start construction next year. We just barely got the funding last session. Lost Creek State Park has had some major challenges with water there as well, which I think is kind of interesting because we're drilling right next to that reservoir. You would think that there would just be all this water available to come, but our first well failed. Our second well is questionable, and we're actually having a harder time getting good water there than we did at Utah Raptor. So that one's in the works. We're hoping to get construction going so we can get the water part of it figured out and have it complete by the end of next year. Red Fleet, I think we already talked about that one, but hoping to have that one wrapped up in early spring, midsummer. What else? Fair Lake Marina. That's our most expensive project that we're working on right now. It's a $60 million project. We're working on the environmental clearances and permitting that's required for the actual marina construction and for the gravel pit, where we're getting the material for that project. We're getting really close on finishing both of those. I should have brought a picture of it, but they're going to be basically doubling the size of the marina to the north of that marina in Garden City, and it's going to be a huge improvement. For public safety at Bear Lake, if you're familiar with boating at Bear Lake, and the thing comes up, everybody wants to come in. That's really the only marina where you can get sheltered, and it's just not adequate to take all the boats. So this is going to make a huge difference in safety, and also just in housing more boats that want to have boat slips. I think we have 400 people on our waiting list right now that want slips. So there's a lot of that project. We're hoping to start in the spring and have that one finished by mid-25. We have another big construction project at Bear Lake on the opposite side of the lake at Rainbow Cove, where we're building a new campground and day use area and beach access. Jordanelle has a campground that we're building at Rockcliffe, where the Provo River comes in to Jordanelle. That one's going along well. We're hoping to have that completed by fall of 24. And then projects that are finished that we'll be cutting the ribbon on next spring. You saw the campground at Escalante yesterday. Jordanelle has another project on the Ross Creek side where we've added a whole bunch of parking, shade shelters, and new beach access. Bear Lake has a campground at North Eden. We have a lot going on at Bear Lake. That's our farthest north campground. It's right literally on the Idaho border. We have a brand new campground that we'll be cutting the ribbon on next spring. Green River has a new campground that's nearly finished, and a cottage village that's right on the Green River. It's just spectacular. It's amazing. Willard Bay has a new campground and a new entrance road. And we're particularly excited about that new entrance road because Willard Bay has had huge problems when everybody wants to go there Saturday morning and the traffic backing up on I-15 and then UHP at our throats, creating a public safety hazard. So we're rerouting that traffic around our new, what do we call it, pond now, the non-motorized swim and recreation area. So we have a lot more queuing distance. So that's going to be a huge improvement for Willard Bay. Have a new campground at Wasatch Mountain State Park that's nearly finished at Soldier Hollow. There's a lot of construction going on, a lot of new projects, and I guess that's what I wanted to get across. So lots of cool stuff happening. Last, with the legislative session, I'm hearing lots of talk about more investment in recreation and in state parks, and that's exciting. I told Jack yesterday that, you know, I believe it or not, I turned down any ongoing general fund money because I don't want to become addicted to it. When the next challenge comes, and you know, what the legislature giveth, the legislature can take it away, and I've seen that. So, but we'll take all the one-time funding they want to send our way for expansion and improvement. And I'm hearing more desire to do that. So I expect to see some new things. There's talk of a couple new state parks that I can't share the information, but if you're familiar with the areas, you might know about them. But there's interest in expanding our state park system, and I think that's awesome, because the governor's office, the legislature, a lot of people in the legislature recognize the value of recreation and the value that brings to Utah. We've got some bills that we're sponsoring this session, one of which I don't think Scott mentioned would allow us to keep interest on our restricted accounts. That's a huge one for us right now. That interest just goes into the general fund. Our sister agency is able to do that in DWR, and we've talked to the governor's office about it, and got their thumbs up on doing the same thing on the state park side.
I didn't know wildlife resources could do that.
Yeah. And Scott, do you happen to remember our guesstimate, if you're still there, on what that would bring state parks?
Yeah, it's estimated to be about $500,000 a year.
Yeah, so that's a lot of money.
That's significant.
That's significant. We still got some cleanup that needs to be done that happened from the division split when they split the programs away from state parks. So there'll be a cleanup bill. We're also working on a bill to formalize state park access to some of our new state parks and existing state parks. Basically identify the access roads in code so that we can tap into the UDOT funding for improvement on those roads. This came from a conversation that I had with the Hurricane mayor about improving, I don't know what that road is outside of Sand Hollow, but there's major traffic issues that are created from our visitors that coming into Sand Hollow State Park. And unfortunately, the north part of the access road is identified in code, but the south part that goes to the new highway, is that Highway 9? Yeah, Highway 7 isn't in that code. And if we get that changed, that means we can tap into funding, or actually the county or city can apply for funding through UDOT to be able to put towards expansion and improvement of the road. So there'll be a bill about that.
It's your sponsor on these.
Don't have one on any of those yet. We're working on lining those up. We'll find a good one. Last thing I was just going to mention is, as usual, we're learning about some ideas to reduce or eliminate fees for certain groups to state parks, and that one's a real challenge for us. I get it as a legislator. You know, you get constituents that we want a free pass like what National Park Service does. Well, we're not funded like National Park Service. National Park Service is funded with tax money, and as Jack and I were talking last night, you can't have it both ways. We're either a self-funded agency, and to me, it makes sense that the people that use our parks pay for our parks, and I think it's important to keep that. And so it's just going to take some work on our end, educating these legislators, and hopefully they'll work with us on trying to find a way for them to achieve the goals that they have, but still protect the self-funded direction that we have as an agency. And that's something that comes up every year. So we're kind of used to it, but I can't say that it's not frustrating to deal with it, because, the direction that we're under does make sense. That was really long, but that's what I had. Unless you have any questions. there's a lot of really good stuff going on in the state parks. It's super exciting time. Yes, sir.
I guess we'd have to talk to you about trying to get better signage for Edge of the Cedars State Park, because the first time I tried to find it, I could not, and it's in in a neighborhood at the very end. You would never think it's there, but it is such an incredible place. But some type of signage out on 191, and then something that directs people, because you think you're in a housing development,
Yeah.
which you are.
I would say that's the most confusing state park
It's,
to get
I
to.
tried to find it and I was like, we left and then I went back.
Megan, if you're still there, do you have any updates? I know we're working on that, but I'm not sure if there's been any progress made, but we definitely need to.
Well, if you need me to write a letter or anything to support to get
Okay.
to UDOT, I can certainly do that. I'll get the commissioners to sign it, whatever.
I think they used to have, like something painted on the road, you know, follow
That's
these.
what they said, but
Arrows or the.
Yeah.
something.
any.
Oh, I'll get with Elaine. Hi, Elaine. I'll get with you and let's talk about some possibilities, because the UDOT did put up a sign that has helped a little, but it's just not enough. So some of the other signs on the way to the museum are like hid behind some other city signs. So we got some work to do there. We did replace one that had tape all over it though. So yes.
Yeah, that part could be, the visitation could go up, should go up a
I
third.
have big combination.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
I think some of it is just tree trimming, because some of the trees have gotten so big that you can't
I
see
mean,
the
it's
signs until you get up
incredible
to them.
with everything outside and being where it's located,
Yeah.
you know, and then of course the other one is, goosenecks and how we can enlarge that part because, and put some amenities there. That would be great. We're trying to work on increased visitation. And we would love more people to see, you know, they think horseshoe bend is goosenecks, and we're trying to say it's better than horseshoe bend because you have three, not
Yeah.
just like one, and it's really big.
Yeah.
So how do we, you know, if we can do something to help enlarge, and I'll get any letter you want written.
Okay. So I know we are working with BLM to acquire more property so we can do more there. I equate goosenecks to gunlock. So gunlock was kind of in a similar situation where it was kind of out of sight, out of mind. And over the last 5-10 years, we've made some major improvements, and we've actually, I think I forgot to mention that one. That's another project that we're working on to do a major expansion to get across the river and to the other side where there's some incredible sand dunes and beach areas. But what my point is that Gunlock was kind of similar in that, you know, it's a state park, but we really don't do much with it.
It's all opportunity.
But it's becoming something much more, and I see the same thing happening at goosenecks in the future and Paiute for
Absolutely.
that, so.
Well, whatever letters of support, whatever you need, just let me know.
And I would say Megan's closest on that one, so
She's my
Megan,
buddy.
put her to work.
She's my buddy.
Thank you.
And any other questions for Jeff? Okay, we'll move on and let's go to Lauren and Shane with some rules to change and repeal, looks like.
Okay, Shane, do you want me just to cover the special closures and restrictions one, and then you have the rest?
Sure, that sounds good.
Okay. So for our 651, 633 special closures and restrictions, we actually had made a change on this the last board meeting, but we found another change we want to make. And in the spirit of allowing access and more opportunities at state parks, we want to change the rules to now allow dogs on the interpreted mountain bike trail system at Dead Horse Point State Park. So the current rule reads that there's a restriction, you can't take your dogs, and so we want to change it and remove it completely, so basically striking it so that it does allow dogs. And Jeff has a personal, this is
Mr.
Jeff's
Chair,
personal one.
Add to that a little bit. So I'll say you can blame me on this, but I believe as an agency, we should be about more about opportunities and less about restrictions. I get it, the restrictions are necessary when they're well justified, but what I always ask our folks is that when we're thinking about opportunities versus restrictions, if we're going to err on one side or the other, we ought to err on the side of opportunity, because that's what we're all about, right? We're a multi-use agency. We manage public land, and we manage public land for everyone. And so one of my personal pet peeves is I hate it when I hear about, well, it's a rule because that's the way it's always been. And, we got to follow the rules. Well, call me rebellious, but I want to know why. Why do we have that rule? And I recently stayed at Dead Horse Point State Park, and I've mentioned before, I love the mountain bike, and the reason one of the many reasons I stayed at Dead Horse is because I'd never been able to ride their mountain bike trails. Well, I also love dogs, and I always have my dog with me, and I actually take our dog on our mountain bike rides, my wife and I, quite often. And I do keep her on a leash when leashes are required, and it works perfectly good. But when I was there, I noticed that dogs weren't allowed on the mountain bike trails. And I told you, I'm curious. I asked Jim, our park manager, why is that? And I've heard in the past that the reason why we didn't allow dogs on the trails at Dead Horse was because they're too busy and it would create too many user conflicts. Well, I live in the Salt Lake area, and I ride my mountain bike quite often in the Mill Creek area. And if you're familiar with Mill Creek and Salt Lake area, it's incredibly busy. And so I actually, Jim and I, the manager at Dead Horse, we had a conversation around the campfire that one of the nights I was staying there. And I said, Jim, help me understand why we have this restriction. And I told him, I'm all about supporting it if there's a legitimate reason to support it. But I can't wrap my head around justifying it just simply because we're too busy, because I would argue that the Salt Lake mountain bike trails, especially those right along the Wasatch Front, are far busier than what we have at Dead Horse Point. Don't get me wrong, Dead Horse Point is busy. There's a lot of riders, but I wouldn't say they're busier than Salt Lake. And Jim's a new manager there, and what Jim said was, I'd like to check with some of our mountain bike clubs and some of the users and just get some feedback on, what's their perception of it? What do they think should happen? And he did that. And I'll be honest, I was expecting pushback that, well, it's that way because it's always been that way and we don't want to change it. But he actually heard the exact opposite. And the one that he got a lot of feedback, but the one that I do remember was from our concessionaire there at Dead Horse Point. And the concessionaire actually said, you know what? I've always wondered why Dead Horse is the outlier, because all the other mountain bike trails in the Moab area, or most of them, they allow dogs. And from his point of view, it's created a problem for his business because a lot of the visitors come with their dogs. They come to ride the mountain bike trail and they can't leave their dog in the car because it's too hot. And so basically that means that they can't ride. And this is where I'm coming from as a user, as a state park user. I don't want to have to leave my dog in my campsite because she's going to bark because she wants to come and play with her family. So anyway, Jim conferred with some of the local groups and decided that this did make sense for Dead Horse Point. And anyway, that's some of the background as to why this came here.
Any other questions or further discussion? Okay, if not, I would accept a motion to approve amendment to rule R 651-633 special closures and restrictions.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, got a motion from Elaine. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
A second from Russ. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Moving on to Shane for the other two, is that correct?
Yep, can y'all hear me?
We can, thank you.
So these two rules are repeals. It's Rule 651-801 and Rule 651-802. The repeals of these rules are necessitated by the division split. So you'll notice in the rules that the authorization to make these particular rules is under the State Boating Act. And so because the boating program moved over to the Division of Outdoor Recreation, it's actually the Division of Outdoor Recreation that now has the responsibility to enact and update and promulgate these rules. We've been working on those rules over on the DOR side, and we've incorporated both of these rules into the boating rules. We actually filed those yesterday, so they will be on track to be approved. At the same time, these rules are repealed if you vote to repeal them today. So the rules will remain essentially as they're written now. They're just going over to DOR, and they'll be differently numbered. So if you have any questions, happy to answer them, but these are just simply repeals.
Okay, any questions for Shane? Okay, I would accept a motion, I guess, first on R 651-801, the boat and swimming prohibition.
I'll make a motion. Approved, sir. Was that to read the whole thing?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
For rule R 651-801, swimming prohibited.
Okay, got a motion from Val. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Yeah, a second from Brad. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and then the next rule, 802 scuba diving.
I'll move to approve the repeal of Rule 651-802 scuba diving.
Okay, I've got a motion from Jack. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second from Fallon. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right, thank you so much. And just while we're thinking about, appreciate our deputy directors, all your work, assistant to support for Jeff, all your efforts there, and our regional managers. We got Megan and Chris and I guess our other regional managers helping out with the bison, and appreciate Wayne and all of our park managers. And we talked about earlier that really it all comes down to our people, and we love our people, and there's what makes the difference. It's not campgrounds, it's people that creates the experience. And we love and appreciate all the efforts. Next on the agenda is setting our next meeting dates. And so is that for looking at the,
We already kind of set down February 8th in Salt Lake,
okay,
and we had May 8th and the 9th in Washington County,
okay,
and August 14th and 15th in Palisade, Huntington Millside. If those are all still good.
okay. Have we got that on your calendars? All right. If there's any other business we need to attend to? All right, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. All right, thank you so much. Appreciate you as a board and everything.
All right, guys, we have lunch set up for you out just there in front of Magnolia's.